Today, we are thrilled to have Miss Tamara Sheppard join us. Tamara is a licensed social worker whose dedication shines through her work with student support services in an urban district in New York State. With her extensive experience and passion for helping students thrive, Tamara brings invaluable insights into understanding and addressing ADHD within diverse educational settings. Welcome, Tamara.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely my pleasure being here today, and I hope that something that I share is helpful to those who are listening.
Thank you. So, people hear the word social worker, they are wondering, how does your role in the district, right, impact students with ADHD?
So, my role is kind of multifaceted because we have a unique position where we're there to support the student, we're there to support the family, and we're also there to support the school. So, a lot of times when there's different behavioral things that come up or different strategies that teachers or staff are trying to learn about, or if there's conversations that we need to have with parents, the social workers are an intricate part of that. Because many times, if it's determined that a student needs counseling, we would be providing that individual or group counseling for them. If there's conversations regarding the discussion of medication, we are usually kind of the ones having those conversations with the families and assessing their comfortability with it. And as well as the teachers kind of, well, what do I do with this student that's showing a little bit more difference than the others? So that's why I would say that our role comes in, because we're able to connect and support various people at a time.
So, talking about that role, what are the kind of symptoms, right, teachers express challenges that we might want to know about?
Well, I think that definitely one of the signs that are very noticeable is the student that can't sit still. If they're fidgeting, if you're, reaching out to them, trying to teach them, they're looking all over the room. They're not able to stay on task. They might be standing up. They might be talking a little bit more. They might have a little avoidance to them. They might, seem like they're not focusing. But then on the other hand, those are the students that stick out. The ones that kind of go under the radar are the students who don't have that hyperactivity piece of it, but struggle with attention, where they could be sitting there looking and trying to take in everything that's going on. But because their behaviors are not so outwardly, sometimes they fall through the cracks. So definitely wanting to look at those students who aren't causing visible things and checking in with them and seeing if they're understanding. And for the students who are having difficulty with paying attention or listening or putting an effort into their schoolwork, talk with them as well, because I think that it's very important that we rule out other factors. I think a lot of times we put that label on when there's so many other factors that could be contributing to a student's inattentiveness or hyperactivity.
So, you talked about the family dynamics. From your experience, what are the kind of challenges parents share with you that they encounter interacting with teachers or staff?
So some of the things that parents indicate is that they don't always feel heard. Even though we say that we want to treat parents as experts, sometimes we don't always take their feedback into consideration. There's also sometimes a lack of trust, where there has been information that has been shared that has become the topic of discussion or a topic of judgment, where they feel like there's stigma and labels and stereotypes that have been attached to them. There's also the piece of them feeling as though the school system is trying to push medication on their children. And that for them is one of the biggest things that I've heard from parents is, why do they always want me to put my child on medication and not looking into the reasons for their apprehensions? To parents, they're looking at it, is this going to make my child be a zombie? Are they going to, be sitting still? Are they going to lose their personality? What exactly is going to happen to them? And when you have that conversation, some of them have been open to trying medication. Other things that parents have talked about is that they get more phone calls regarding the negative behaviors or aspects of their students' education more than they get positive. and they would like to have a little bit more balance of that. And lastly, I've, heard parents explain that sometimes they don't necessarily want the school to have their updated contact information because it's one more call, one more issue, one more problem that they have to deal with. And many of them are trying to work, get out and make a living and do things to keep the household going. And they don't have the time to keep coming to the school when there's an issue.
So how are you able to balance that? How are you able to get staff to understand, and what strategies are you able to use that you can share with us that have been effective in bringing this to very important aspect of the kid's life to the table?
I like to keep things person centered, and I
Mhm,
also like to keep them individualized. So if I'm talking with a parent and they're expressing some of these concerns with me, and I empathize, I connect with them, I understand that yes, it can be frustrating, it can be scary, and talk with them about their fears about things
mhm,
and kind of share with them, understandably so, when you've tried something more than once and it's not successful, do we? But if they're on the fence about medication, where they're like, do I or don't I talk with them and say, as adults, when we have a headache, we can try Tylenol. And if that doesn't work, we try ibuprofen. And if ibuprofen doesn't work, we try something else. So we're constantly looking for something to help relieve that pain or that issue that we're dealing with. And sometimes it takes trying things more than once to see what fits for your child. I also encourage them to do medication reviews. So once they get, if they pursue that, getting their child medication, have you had those conversations with the doctors about what you're observing, what things have changed, what has gotten better, what is it that you're noticing about them? Additionally, with parents, when we're completing like the social history paperwork, and
mhm,
parents are talking to me, saying that years ago their child had been diagnosed with something, but they felt like it was something else. I
mhm,
encourage them go back to the pediatrician
mhm,
because I think that, as I said earlier, that children are given the ADHD label when there's other traumatic things that have gone on with them, and also help the parents try to process through what is something that your child may have experienced
mhm,
or dealt with that you may have thought that they got through or that you were able to get through that you don't realize may be having an impact on your child, and
mhm,
talking with them about the possibilities of exploring that as well. So for me, I don't come at people as the quote unquote expert. I try to talk to them in real terms and connect with them to let them know, hey, it's up to you to decide. And I'll give one example. One of my first couple of years in the district, there was a student that I was working with who had been diagnosed with ADHD.
mhm,
And he was struggling really hard. And I know that the school had been advocating for the parents to pursue medication. And I had completed several home visits, just talking with the parent, like, hey, your child is not able to pay attention in school and it's greatly impacting their academics. And it wasn't until we had a meeting in my office with the teachers and the
mhm,
parent, and they showed the parent academically where her fourth grade student was, the reading level that he was at, the types of books that he was able to read were at a kindergarten and a first grade level. And it was at that point that the parent broke down and cried in the office because she said she didn't know that her child was that impacted. And she felt ashamed that her apprehensiveness, to pursuing other strategies had created this. And she said, well, they talk all the time. They're able to have conversation. And, we were able to explain conversational language is different than reading comprehension. And, after she was able to see that this is what the impact has been, she was more interested in pursuing, the counseling, more interested in pursuing medical interventions because she wanted to help her son be able to pay attention. And lastly, on that, I would say that when his medication would start to run out and he would, tell his mom, hey, I need to get more medication. And if she was kind of slow on doing that, he would go pull a fire drill. He
mhm.
would do something to kind of signal to us, like, you have to call home. You have to let my mom know to get. So even he noticed the difference of how he was feeling and how some, of the strategies were working, that's the way that he would prompt us to do it.
So, talking about the story, I'm listening to you and I'm wondering, do you think, from your experience with parents you've met, that when their kids are diagnosed, they are really informed and educated about what it truly means.
From my perspective, and again, this is from completing hundreds of social histories over the years that I've been in a school. And for those who don't know what social histories are, those are packets of information that we complete with parents when their child is going to a committee on special education meeting. So the portion of that paperwork that I cover is it looks at medical history, educational history, social and emotional history. And from talking to them about that, whether their child has been diagnosed in the past, they know that if I mention my child has this symptom, this is what they're diagnosed with, but they don't necessarily know what that means. They don't necessarily know that, you know, the medication, you know, if you notice things different, that you should speak up and say something. They don't necessarily know that there are other things that their child could have going on. I recently, last week, was doing a social history with a parent, and you know, they indicated that their child was diagnosed with ADHD, but that they didn't know like what that looked like. But when we talked about some of the traumatic things that had occurred for their child, I said to them, you know, has your doctor explored PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder? Like, is with the trauma that has happened with your child, that can also mimic some of the things that you're seeing, like that, those intrusive thoughts, their minds being distracted, them thinking about other things. Those are some of the things that can come up with that. So once we had that conversation, she said, you know, no one's ever told me that. So now, you know, I want to talk with his doctor and, you know, really be able to see what else this could be. And I also explained to the parent that if you're noticing that your child has been put on Concerta or Adderall or Ritalin, kind of those medications that are for ADHD, and you're not noticing a change, I explained to them that medication can help with kind of those behaviors, but it doesn't fix the emotional. So if there's something that's impacting them or that they're dealing with, you also have to treat and focus on that part too, to get to the root of whatever is bothering them or might be triggering or them that hasn't had a chance to be processed or explained outward.
Let's look at the professionals, teachers that are the forefront of taking care of kids with ADHD. From your experience, can you share if you think that they are getting the training, the understanding, strategies that they can use to manage their classrooms?
So I would say, and I'll just start with this caveat, that teaching today is a lot different than how it was 20, 25, 30 years ago. And some of the things that our students and families are entering the school setting with are much different than what we saw years ago. And I think because of that, it can be overwhelming to teachers whose programs did not prepare them to deal with behavioral or social emotional supports. And when I talk with, you know, staff members who went through different programs and came into the school setting, you know, some of them will share, we didn't talk about this stuff. We didn't learn this. You learned how to write a lesson, how to teach a lesson plan, you know, how to scaffold approaches, how to, you know, set up the differentiated learning or the ways that you could support students who have different needs, learning needs. But that social emotional piece of how do you deal with the student who didn't sleep the night before? How do you deal with, you know, students that are homeless? Or how do you deal with people that are living in poverty and may not, you know, be having, you know, certain resources? How do you deal with that in the classroom? So I think that's one piece of it, is the training. The other side of it, I think, is that there are trainings. There are opportunities, I would say, specifically within our district that are offered through our teaching and learning, the True North Logic, kind of that system where staff can go in and get the training, but then it's, do you have the time to do it? Do you feel overwhelmed, or when your work day is over, is do you have time or energy for that one more thing? So I think those are some of the factors that contribute to people either being trained before they enter the
Mhm.
classroom or what kind of motivates them to seek the training while they're on the job.
Okay. So, have you seen or trainings in the system that are ADHD specific? How common is that?
So I'll say for myself, the division that I work in within our district, I help facilitate a lot of trainings.
Mhm.
So with that, I personally have facilitated trainings on trauma in the school environment, the aftermath of trauma, mental health in the school setting, and have talked about the various diagnoses that appear in the school setting and how we can support. I've also personally facilitated social emotional learning trainings on some of the behaviors that might be seen in schools and how staff can create classrooms that follow those models to be able to support students. But I can't say if I've seen something that says ADHD, what you need to learn 101. I can't say that I've personally seen that.
So, what strategies, in your experience, have you found most effective in supporting students with ADHD in the urban districts, setting?
I've found that it starts with supporting the teachers and getting them to look at things from a lagging skills perspective. Years ago, the job that I had before, where I told you we looked at that child and family team model, is
Mm.
we looked at what are some of the things that the student is doing or a child is doing that might be negative to us, but is getting their need met, and then looking at what is the need that needs to be met. Do they need to be able to be a leader and have some incentives, doing the check in and check outs, checking in? How are things with you in the morning? How are things going on with you throughout the day and at the end of the day? And one thing I've learned is that sometimes with students who are diagnosed with ADHD, they pick up a lot of different things. So you might be think that they're not paying attention to you, but they're listening to you. They're also paying attention to the conversation on the other side of the room. They're taking in, the lesson that's being taught up in the front. So there's just a lot of stimulation that's occurring, but it doesn't always mean that they can't understand or pick up on what's being done. So looking at how do you use those strengths? If you see that a student is able to multitask, what role can you give them in the classroom? If you see that they're finishing with their things and they're starting to fidget a little bit, what can you give them at their desk? So I would just encourage people that whether you have had a diagnosis of ADHD, your child has, or you know someone, look at the strength. You meet doctors who have ADHD. You meet social workers who have ADHD. You meet construction workers who have ADHD. Any facet of the workforce or in the community that you can think of that involves people, there's someone who may have that diagnosis, but that goes to show that you still can function.
If there is a parent listening right now that is struggling with understanding how to support their kids in school,
Mhm.
what will be your advice?
I would say too to not give up on your child, to not give up hope. At times it may be frustrating, it may be overwhelming. You may feel like you're at your wits end, that you don't know what else that you can do, that you don't know if you have the energy, the wherewithal, the mental fortitude to be able to keep going or to try it again and to, you know, get on the other side of things. But I would encourage you, don't give up, because your child needs you. They need to know. I'll say this. Insoo Kim Berg came out with some working
Mhm.
assumptions about children and about parents. And the working assumptions that they said were that children want their parents to be proud of them. They want to do well. They want to receive praise. They want to be successful. And the working assumptions about parents said that they want their child to do better than them, that they want to hear good things about their children, and they want their children to be successful. So, in keeping both things in mind, parents and children are two individuals on their own road trying to seek success, trying to be whole, and trying to do better. So once you have that understanding and know that both of you are on that journey, both of you are trying to make it and get through that, I think that kind of changes the understanding and the viewing that a parent might have regarding the behavioral or struggles that their child has. But please allow yourself to be open to your child being able to receive some supports and resources as well.
So, on a final note, do you have anything that you would want our listeners to know?
I would just say that again, just if you're noticing things about your child that's a little bit different, that is sticking out to you, that things may have changed or that you have questions about, talk to the social worker, talk to the counselor, speak to the teacher at your school, and also speak to their pediatrician. Because when it comes to supporting your child, it's going to take a team approach. It's not just a one size fits all. One person isn't necessarily going to have all of the answers, but the more people that you can get to sit around that table and support your child, I believe the better the outcome would be for their learning and their educational journey.
Thank you, Tamara, for all you do. Your insights into supporting students with ADHD in urban education settings have been invaluable. We are so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you that you are embarking on this and being able to get the word out there and start the conversation. So you
Thank
keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, to our listeners, we hope you found this episode enlightening and informative. Stay tuned for more discussions on Unstitching ADHD Urban Ed Talks. Remember, understanding and support are key to unlocking the potentials of every student. Until next time, have a great day.